Welcome everybody to the October 2020 edition of the Startup Monterey Bay Tech Meetup. Glad to see you all here tonight. We've got a great lineup and we'll go through that in a moment, but let's start with a couple other things. Let's go to the next slide there, Lynette. Our Zoom housekeeping slide. The way this is set up, you can ask questions using the chat icon at the bottom of your screen. We will be keeping an eye on that. Remember that your questions are visible to everybody by default. Unless you send a private message, you can do that. Select the individual's name and you can send them a private message. And there's our opening poll for y'all to answer. Just asking, where are you tuning in from? It's always good to know where people are coming from. We'll find out who came the furthest to get to this online. That used to make sense to say who came the furthest. It doesn't anymore. Well, who's listening from the furthest away would be the way to think about that. For optimal viewing, if you stay in speaker view mode, that will work the best. Please keep your microphone muted. And a note, we do record these and we will post the recording up on the website, on the Startup Monterey Bay website. So if you don't want to be recorded, keep your camera off and don't say anything. But just so you know that we are recording. Please answer the poll. It's just fun to get everybody in on the poll. We'll leave that up for a moment longer. Lynette, let's go to the next slide. I want to acknowledge our sponsors, the IP Society, Angel to Exit, Blue Tech Valley, Startup Monterey Bay, that's us, and California State University, Monterey Bay. We thank them for their support and making this possible. On to next. So welcome to the Startup Monterey Bay Tech Meetup. This is a networking event, although networking is more challenging these days. But we're here to share and learn and find out what's happening. We have 4 great companies who will be presenting tonight. We've got some news about some things that have been happening in the region recently. And this is about building a community. I've always said that entrepreneurship is a team sport. It's also a community sport. It takes a community. It takes a village, as they say, to launch a company. So have fun, make money, and change the world. On to the next. This is our Tech Meetup team. Hi, everybody. I'm Brad Barbeau, the guy on the upper left. Mary Jo Zanks. Say hello, Mary Jo. Can she unmute? There we go.
Hey there.
There's Mary Jo. You'll hear from her a little bit later. Then Dan Ripke. Say hi, Dan.
Hey, good evening.
And Dr. Jenny Kwan. I believe that Jenny is not on currently. And then our student support staff, Selena Harris. Oh, I'm sorry, Lynette, you're down in the, we got to change where you are on there. Lynette is not a student anymore. She was a few years ago, but now she's full-time with us. Say hi, Lynette.
Hi, everyone.
And Lynette's the driver also. She's the one who runs the slides and makes everything go. And Nina Cornelius, who helps us organize this, she plays a big role. And Kenneth Olson, who is a student and is the coordinator for the Get Virtual program. On to next. Tonight, we've got 4 companies, all of whom presented at the Startup Investment and Community Capital Expo. This is our chance to hear from them in a little more informal environment and hear updates since, that was only about 2 weeks ago, but you know, never know. Great things may have happened. Maybe they all went public. We'll find out. We have Mitch Slater of Levered Learning, Tabitha Stroop of Terroir in a Jar, Sibley Simon of New Way Homes, and Cecily Gambrell of 17 Mile Drive Entertainment. And next, but before we get to them, I don't think we're going to do the one sentence. Well, we could do the one sentence intro. So we just, if everybody goes through quick, say your name, get your voice in the room, and one sentence about what you do. So like this, I'm Brad Barbeau, and I'm Executive Director of the Institute for Innovation and Economic Development at CSU MB. Let's go to, and how this works is, after you introduce yourself, you call on the next person. So I'm going to go down to Derek Glover.
Hello, hopefully you can hear me.
Yep.
Derek Glover, work in Oracle Cloud Infrastructure and also an ambassador with their Oracle Startups program.
Excellent. And who are you going to call on to introduce themselves next?
Oh yes, skip that part already. I already forgot, short memory. Let's call on Hillary Talbot.
Hi, I'm Hillary Talbot, and I am the founder of Sale Community Capital, and I help startups and small businesses raise up to $1,070,000 through regulation crowdfunding via debt or equity offering. And I'm on my iPad, so I would love to call on Tabitha because her picture popped up at the bottom of my screen.
Hi there.
There you go.
Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. My name is Tabitha Stroop. I'm the founder and owner of Terroir in a Jar, and our company is all about lifting our community one jar at a time. All right, Cicely, your turn.
Hello, my name is Cecily Gambrell. I'm born and raised on the peninsula to a degree. I am founder of 17 Mile Drive with my partner Tracy Bennett, who's the Maui Film Commissioner. And we want to make LA by the Bay the first studio right here on the peninsula. And I suppose I will call on Ann Banta. Did I
Hi,
get
I'm
that right?
Ann Banta, and started my career at Intel running communications, and then worked for about 20 years with Moore David Out Ventures and Tallwood Venture Capital, and I, as a Renta Vice President of Marketing, responsible for launching, and I've launched 36 startups and 11.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Cool. And you're going to call on?
Oh, I will call on, let's see if I can scroll down here. I will call on John.
Thanks, Ann. I'm John Tanacci. I'm networking my way back into the area. I've been back about 2 months. I was Dan's drinking buddy at the Expo's virtual cafe. And
I might bring my own here.
You were the one who got him so drunk.
and I'm a recovering chemistry professor and interested in all the entrepreneurship that's happening in the area.
Cool.
I'm gonna call on, let's see. I'll call on Doug.
Okay. Got me there. My name's Doug Erickson. I'm ED of Santa Cruz Works. I'm one of Brad's biggest fans. And other than that, I'm just a barely average surf guy. And I'll call on Ann. Ann Banta.
She already
Already
introduced
went.
herself.
Oh, I'm sorry.
This
Okay,
is like a memory
Elias?
game. You have to remember which
Yeah,
one's been
forget
called.
it. I've already lost then.
And there's
Elias.
a quiz at the end to see if you know everybody's name.
How about Elias?
Elias.
Elias will need to unmute and unvideo, or you show video. 5, we'll give 5, 4, 3, 2. Jorge, how about Jorge?
Jorge, are you there?
Let's try
Available? There we go.
He was there.
There you go.
There he is.
There he is.
Your microphone's not working.
It's a silent introduction. Okay.
All right,
How
we have
about
a
it?
virtual introduction from Shoshana Renee, owner designer.
Oh, there we go.
It's in the chat box.
So if you check your chat box, Shoshana is there. And let's continue on with Kathy Bell. Are you there, Kathy Bell?
Hi, I am
There we go.
here. Thank you. I'm an intern with iiED and CSU MB student.
Cool. And who are you going to call on next?
Let's see. Cecily Gambrell, have you been called on yet?
I
Yep.
have.
You have? Okay.
There's Stephen hiding there.
Okay, Stephen?
Found me. Good evening, everyone. My name is Stephen Fidel, and I am the business librarian at California State University, Monterey Bay. And so I've been keeping careful notes of people's names. So I think I'll call on Dan. I don't think, Dan, you've gone up yet.
I have not. Dan Ripke. I work with the motley crew over at the iiED. And let's see, I'm going to go through here. We've got to create little flip cards so we can flip these things over and know who's gone and who hasn't. Joshua, have you gone yet?
I have not.
There we go. All right.
So I'm Joshua Bradley. I am the co-founder of Levered Learning and CTO. And I will call on my co-founder, Mitch, because I know he hasn't been called yet.
Hey, everybody. Yep, co-founder and CEO of Levered Learning, Mitch Slater.
Cool. And you're
And I'll call on, how about Nate Thompson?
Nate. You there, Nate? Can you unmute? Say hello.
Oh, hi. I'm Nate Thompson, president of a nonprofit organization called Surfing Padre.
Oh, cool. And you're going to call on?
Let's see. Who do we got? I can't see who's there. Hold on. Oh, hold on.
Yeah, you got it? I can move us on.
How about Sibley Simon?
There we go.
Sure, this is Sibley from New Way Homes, which I'll get a chance to introduce later. I'm here in calling in from downtown Santa Cruz. And have we heard Lynette already?
No. Hi there. I'm Lynette Lathrop. I'm the program coordinator for the Institute for Innovation and Economic Development. And I will call on Seth.
Hi everyone, my name is Seth. I work with Tabitha at Terroir in a Jar as her development director, and I will call on Neil.
Hi everyone, my name is Neil Ahir. I'm from King City, California, and I'm currently in CSU MB, and I'm just here to see what's going on.
Cool. Excellent. Thanks, Neil. By my count, that got everybody. Is there anybody? Oh, wait a minute. There is one more.
Mary Jo hasn't gone.
Exactly. I just noticed she was hiding up in the corner where I couldn't see her. So Mary Jo, can you get your voice in the room?
Hi, everyone. My name is Mary Jo Zank, and I'm the program manager at the Institute for Innovation and Economic Development. I'm glad you could all join us.
Cool. All right. Excellent. Let's move to the next slide and see what's. Oh, and Mary Jo, don't go away because you're up. It's time for MJ's monthly news quiz. Take it away, Mary Jo.
Okay, so for those who are just joining us for the first time, each month I pull a couple of entrepreneurial questions of regional news to entrepreneurs, and some of the stuff you'll find on our website, startupmontereybay.com. Others you'll find on the Santa Cruz Tech Beat news and other kind of entrepreneurship networks. So let's start with the first question. It's a poll question. This Startup Challenge winner's story was featured this month on our website, startupmontereybay.com website. And the choices are Carmel Honey Company, Scoot Science, Heavy Connect, or Monterey Bay Food Tours. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, we got a couple more. Okay, it looks like we have a, oh, people are still making their decision. Okay, one more second. Okay, so the consensus is Monterey Bay Food Tours. Let's see what the answer is. Carmel Honey Company. If you haven't gotten a chance to hear about Jake at Carmel Honey Company, take a look at our story. It's really quite exciting. He was a middle school student when he won the Main Street division at Startup Challenge, and it's now a family-owned business. And they have 2 stores, one in Carmel and one in Monterey, and they also have an online business. So pretty exciting. Next question. This local startup recently earned the Learner Variability Product Certification from Digital Promise. Digital Promise does accelerating innovation and education. The options are Schoolsy, New Waves Program, Levered Learning, CSU Monterey Bay, and Bright Futures.
It's not looking like you fooled a lot of people on this one.
I know, I don't think I fooled a lot of people here. Okay, let's end the polling. All right, the consensus is Levered Learning, and the answer is Levered Learning. All right, next question. This local startup company recently launched a Regulation A+ equity crowdfunding campaign on Start Engine last month. And the options are Cellhound, Parallel Flight Technologies, Joby Aviation, Poly, and Cruise Phone. Couple more seconds. Okay, why don't we end the polling? All right, consensus is Parallel Flight Technologies, and the answer is Parallel Flight Technologies. All right, you guys did pretty good. I think the consensus was 2 out of 3. That's great. Well, next slide. So be in the know. Stay tuned to some of the local resources that are out there, both Santa Cruz Tech Beat and our website, and also Santa Cruz Works, trying to spread the word about all the exciting entrepreneurs in this region. All right, Brad, take it away.
Okay, good job, Mary Jo. And we'll hear from some of those companies again later this evening. So, but let's talk a little bit about over the past month, a couple of really amazing events have happened in this area related to entrepreneurship. And for the first of those, I'm going to go to my counterpart in Santa Cruz, my fearless leader, my North Star, the guy I steal every idea I can steal from him, Mr. Doug Erickson, to tell us about Z-Hacks.
Flattery will get you nowhere.
Not been my experience.
I've learned so much from Brad, and I'm going to boast about him throughout this whole thing. So we'll start by grabbing the screen, And again, I'm Doug Erickson. I'm with Santa Cruz Works. We're a 13-year-old organization in Santa Cruz. I'm a very old 40-year-old tech vet that's run global sales for
Doug,
companies like
you're not
Cisco.
40 years old, Doug. You're not.
Oh, if only, if only that were true. We typically put on events, but we also do hackathons called Cruise Hacks. Somewhere in March, April, when COVID was starting to hit, and then with some of the social injustice that was going on, we decided we have to put on another hackathon and give people a way to vent some of the issues that they were experiencing. So we created Z-Hacks, and with the help, the kind help of Brad and Michael Matkin with UCSC, and Jacob Martinez with Digital Nest, Toby Corey, Get Virtual, Susie Jocelyn, Chris Thomas with Head, Hearts, and Hands, Chris Brenner, James O'Connor. We had a huge group of people that helped out on this. And the idea was, let's create a hackathon for everyone, not just for coders, but for people who don't have they didn't grow up in a really nice house or neighborhood where they could afford to learn how to code. We wanted any art form, and I consider coding to be an art, to be anybody to be able to participate in this. So we call it Code, Carve, Sing, Dance, Write. And the categories were social justice, environment, pandemic, and any monies that were contributed were donated to these causes here. You can kind of see this all on our site, so I'm not going to read through it. But I want to, again, call out thanks to all of the people who contributed in the companies that helped put this together. I'm going to jump into showing you some of the winners. Well, first of all, we had 370 participants from 9 different countries around the world. They created 64 different projects. And this was targeted primarily K through 12 and college. I would say the majority were in last year, say, of high school and first or second year of college. And they formed teams and they went after these. One of my favorites and the people's choice was Love is Love. And this was by a 14-year-old girl who just drew some nice photos and put some music or illustrations and put some music to it. If you go to our site, santacruzworks.org, by the way, you can see all these. You can click on this. It's under news and news highlights. And you can click on this and you can actually see the videos that they made about this. The first place under social justice was the Wang family. Wang, two sisters and one brother. Really incredible. They won People's Choice at Cruise Hacks in 2020, and they they're like, how old are they? They can't be more than 12, 13, 14, 15, somewhere in there. And they coded this whole thing. They do it. They're incredibly talented. And they did it for their brother, their youngest brother, who has a rare disease and isn't really able to read very well. They read to him, and they created a project where they go out and they read they get people, students who want to go out and help other people by reading to them. It was really wonderful. Casper Joe Foundation took second place with Democracy, and a video, again, not necessarily anything coded, but a video about how important democracy is if you want social justice. Technocrats helps deaf and mute people communicating in their online classes, something very needed right now. In environment, we had Nutri-Green, and and this is a way to pursue healthy eating habits. HTO had to do with how to use water in areas like India and in other places where you have just massive amounts of water through tsunamis and typhoons and things like that. Big Fridge had to use AI to determine what's needed in your food supply there. Just Learn, I'm trying to think of some of the good, interesting ones. This was a student from back to school, student from Concord, I think, in the Bay Area, and using AI to, I don't know if we want anything like this, so that teachers can actually tell if they're doing an online education, if the students are paying attention. And actually there, as opposed to running off and doing things. Think Care Act was one of our sponsors, and they created a category using many of the models that they have for thinking about ways to help other people and actually doing things. And so there were three places here where three options, and you could create videos with some of their lessons, or you could create an app. Second place won an app. I think third place won an app too. And so that was a very cool one. And then Get Virtual did CareQuest won that Get Virtual. Get Virtual's, Brad, you guys have implemented Get Virtual. And
We have,
right?
yep.
Okay, so with Toby Corey, and that's where students get 5 credits to go help local businesses, and local businesses get free help, meaning you need your website, e-commerce put together, you name it. These students are pretty darn digital literate these days, and they can help businesses that are impacted from economic distress, downturn, social injustice, pandemic, all of that stuff. So that's it. I welcome you guys. Oh, there's Contrast Community. I forgot those guys. But I welcome all of you to if you want to go see these. Again, it's as simple as going to the site, clicking on it, and the actual page from DevPost will come up. You can see, here's Tiffany here who created it, and you can see her video. She can see what inspired her, what it does. All of these have a narrative behind them, and I just feel really lucky that this was a good outlet for a lot of people right now who are feeling socially isolated, and they're seeing a lot of problems in the world, and they just want to do something. And that's it. I hope that's under 5 minutes.
Probably not, but that's okay, Doug. You deserve it.
I'm so, God, I forgot to start my timer. Darn.
That was great, Doug. Thanks. And thanks for taking the lead on putting that. This whole thing was, Doug read a long list of people who helped, but I was one of those helpers, and I know that Doug did 95% of the work on this. So that was amazing that he pulled that together and did it. Thanks for making that happen. It's a great event. I really like the inclusiveness of getting, not just having it be a coding event, but getting everybody involved with all the different modalities. Pretty cool. All right. So the other event that Doug, of course, was also involved in, but this time we turned the tables. I took the lead, and he put in a lot of help on this year's Startup Investment and Community Capital Expo. It just happened a little over a week ago, about 2 weeks ago, actually. We were right in the middle of it. It was, of course, virtual this year. The big challenge for everything is running it virtual. But we built quite a nice platform for it that we're going to now repurpose that platform for Startup Challenge, which will be coming up in the spring. Can we go to the next slide? So the Startup Investment and Community Capital Expo happens each fall. This was the 4th time we've run it. It was the largest we've had. We had 504 registered attendees at it. It ran over 3 days, 3 mornings and into the early afternoon. We kicked the whole thing off with Guy Kawasaki, who many of you probably do know of or know Guy Kawasaki. If you don't, you should know of him. He's been a huge help to the entrepreneurial community, and Doug has recently introduced him to surfing, and he's fallen in love with surfing, so now he lives part-time in Santa Cruz. He kicked it off on Monday morning, and then Jimmy Panetta, the congressman from Monterey, was the keynote speaker on Tuesday, and then Ben Jealous, former head of the NAACP, currently head of the People for the American Way, which is an amazing organization. And he's also been involved with a venture capital firm. And he kicked it off on the 3rd day. And what many people don't realize is that Ben Jealous is a local boy. He grew up in Seaside. And I think we'll be seeing more of him because he said he's really interested in getting involved in this area. So we're going to rope him in here. So that was kicking off each day. And then we continued on each day, next slide, with panel discussions on the current environment, how COVID is affecting venture funding. We had a great session, really informative session on equity crowdfunding. Excuse me, my electronics are talking to me. And then one on inclusivity in funding and access to capital, inclusive restart and reinvention, creating community capital, and inclusivity and social change. So it was a great set of panel discussions. And then the main part of the show, where we had 19 companies pitch to panels of investors. We'll hear from 4 of those companies, 4 of those companies tonight. So it was hugely successful. We love the platform that we built, and you know, all the changes that COVID is bringing about, and one of them is we're all realizing that the virtual world and the real world can work together in ways that we never really imagined before. And so every event that we run now will have, even when we're back to face, we'll keep using these online platforms because they increase the reach and they make it available. So if we go to the next slide, for those of you who missed it or those of you who want to hear more, we've opened up the Expo site, and you can go there, expo.siccmonterey.com, and you have to register to get onto the site, but there's no charge. And all of the sessions were recorded, all of the pitches were recorded. They're available for you to see and hear. And that was SICC. So it's been a busy month this past month. And we all have the sleep deprivation to prove it. Just a quick announcement about Startup Launchpad. Launchpad's open for business. You can get to it through startupmontereybay.com. We have 2 main programs in Launchpad. One is Advise for short term. If you've got an entrepreneurial question, send us an email, give us a ring, and we will do our best to answer it for you. We are our great network of mentors and advisors. And if you're at launch stage and you're interested in ongoing mentoring to get you to the next place, reach out to us for the mentor program. Next, please. What we got here? And we've been talking about it all night. So here's the formal slide on Get Virtual. Everybody should know about Get Virtual because everybody knows some business that's really struggling. They've been hit hard by COVID. They don't have the resources to really strengthen their online presence like they need to in this environment. And that's what Get Virtual is there to do, is to work with companies who are struggling to help them survive the COVID era and beyond, because certainly post-COVID, it's still going to be a very virtual world. This is a student-run project started by a group of students at UC Santa Cruz under the guidance of Toby Corey and, I'm blanking on the name. Doug, do you remember the name of the faculty member?
Nada.
Nada.
Yeah. Don't ask me to say her last name. It's
Yeah, I
Russian.
know it's a really tough one. I have trouble with it too, so I'm not going to try either. And now there are chapters at several other universities. CSUMB was the second university to pick it up. We've got a crew of about 10 students now working on this, and they've got about 10 clients that they're working with. There's a chapter at Santa Clara University. There's the beginnings of a chapter at San Jose State, and there are some that are further out even. So Get Virtual is spreading across the country, and it's a great program. It's great for the students. They get to learn a lot. It adds to their resumes, and they really provide good work and good business for the businesses that they work with. Next slide. If you're looking for COVID-19 resources, there's resources at startupmontereybay.com on our COVID-19 resources for startups page. And next, let's get to the meat of this. Let's get to the meat of this. And now, what you all actually came here to hear are 4 folks. I assume we're going to go in this order. So now I get to stop talking and turn it over to, I believe Mitch is up first. Let's go to the next. Yes, Mitch Slater of Levered Learning. Levered Learning was in Startup Challenge 2 or 3 years ago.
Both, I believe.
Both. That's right, 2 years in a row. You're one of the 2 years. That's not uncommon. The companies will go in and then come back for a second time. It's not only okay to do that, we encourage it. And they did really well. They have done really well since then. They did a great pitch at the Startup Investment and Community Capital Expo. So Mitch, tell us about what Levered Learning is up to.
All right, thanks so much. So as mentioned, Mitch Slater, CEO and co-founder of Levered. And we'll start with the pain point. Lynette, next slide, please. The US ranks in the bottom 25% in terms of our students' math proficiency. That means by 4th grade, only 41% of our kids are actually meeting grade level standards. And that number drops as kids move up through the grade levels to only 1 in 4 by graduation. Next slide, please. The situation is actually worse for students from historically underserved communities. So for example, economically disadvantaged students, students of color, students learning English as their second language. At best, we can hope that 25% of these kids by 4th grade will be proficient, and those numbers also continue to drop. Now, when we talk about economically disadvantaged students and students of color, 70% of public school kids in Monterey County are economically disadvantaged Latino students. So these are the kids in our own communities. Next slide, please. Situation, again, has been further complicated by learning loss from the pandemic, and again, that learning loss disproportionately affecting students in economically disadvantaged schools and communities. I was a classroom teacher for 20 years before I started Levered. I actually started out in Watsonville. And I knew when I started the company that we would need to do more than just create an app or some sort of supplemental online tutorial program. Next slide. So at Levered, we undertook a systems level reimagining of 21st century learning. And we started with a complete instructional system for elementary mathematics. Next slide. The average impact of Levered in Title I schools has been a 70% higher learning gains for the group of students that uses that program for the first time. So when these kids get their hands on Levered, the improvement in their test scores in math is 70% higher than the same grade level at the same school the year before Levered came in. Next slide, please. And again, those results are some of the strongest gains come from those underserved populations that I talked about. So it's important to note that not only do these groups of students outperform the statewide averages by 40 or 50% in terms of their learning gains over the course of the year, but they're making more than a year's growth in a single year. The average growth is about 40 points, and you can see on the left side of that scale, these kids are making upwards of 50, 60 scale score points growth. That means they're making more than a year of progress, and we do that year after year, we'll actually be closing the achievement gap for these kids. Next slide, please. To dive in just a little bit more to that level of detail, the growth that we see doesn't just come from low students that are moving up towards meeting standards. We also see students who came in at grade level advancing to above grade level. And we see that at Title I schools, regular schools, affluent schools, all across the board. Next slide. And it's not unusual for us to see double-digit increase in the percentage of kids exceeding standards, which is really important. We talk about closing the achievement gap. We also need to be keeping an eye on the kids in these communities who could be coders, engineers, architects, making sure that they stay engaged and challenged. Next slide. Last spring, even though we had developed Levered for the classroom setting, we also learned that it is an ideally suited platform for distance learning. This year, we have district level participation on a weekly basis exceeding 95% of students with over 30 minutes of average engagement per day. Next slide. The teachers who made the transition last spring from using Levered in their classroom to using it for distance learning described that transition as seamless and flawless, which is a very different narrative than we heard from many other teachers around the country and around the world. Students were able to continue learning from home the first week that schools were closing. We saw this in our partner schools in Salinas. Next slide, please. We were chosen by ASU GSV as one of the elite 200 companies to compete for this year's GSV Cup. As mentioned in the poll, we also not only have received the research-based design certification, we just learned that we are one of only 11 companies to now have both of Digital Promises product certifications. Their brand new learner variability certification, we're one of the first cohort to receive that. Next slide, please. I am honored to be joined by a mission-driven team. My co-founder Joshua, who's going to join us for the Q&A, has the same depth of experience in business and technology that I bring in education. And the rest of our team is rounded out by experienced educators, industry veterans, and our resident Doctor of Learning Sciences, Dr. Lara Triona. Next slide, please. So let's talk a little bit about our growth. Please, next slide. 80% of our growth has been organic to this date. That means teacher to teacher and principal to principal referrals. And we've seen a 20x growth in the number of students on our platform since we moved from free pilots to paid student licenses in 2019. Next slide. In terms of our value proposition, what we offer to a district is that we can replace not only their traditional textbook, but also the online supplementals. So we replace multiple line items with a single line item that's cheaper in the aggregate, more effective in the first year of implementation, easier to implement, and remote ready out of the box. Next slide. We're a SaaS company. We sell directly to schools and districts. Most schools will pay about $42 per student per year. We also now have a direct-to-home version, direct-to-consumer version for about $9 per year. And we're actually thinking about lowering our annual price a bit on that, so we need to update that slide. Next slide, please. The total market for a K-6 math program is about $1.6 billion in the US. Our serviceable market are the Common Core states where the friction is a little lower for entry, so it's about $1 billion market. California alone is just 20% of that market. By just adding 5 more states, we get to half of the market, and then an additional $250 million in the homeschool. Next slide, please. So that 20x brings us to 2019, and now we've tripled revenue in 2020 in our second year of sales by expanding from 1 grade level to 3. And next year, we're going to more than double our grade level offerings and push us to another 10x growth in revenue. Next slide. To take a closer look at that go-to-market strategy, next year we're expanding to a full K-6 program, which is a big deal because many elementary districts are looking for products that can cover all their grade levels. The following year, we'll expand to K-8 and add in Spanish, not only to give more access to dual immersion programs and newcomer programs in California and the rest of the state, but also to the international market. Next slide, please. We're currently running a crowdfunding campaign on Republic and an angel round as well, and we have matching financing. About half of that money will go towards the product development and about half towards sales and marketing. Next slide. So if you are a decision maker in a district in your community and you could not spend more but spend smarter to give your teachers less planning time and less stress, more confidence in their teaching, more time with their students, a seamless transition for distance and classroom-based instruction, and increase student learning by at least 150%, would you make that change? That's it. Next slide. And if you want to check out more information, you can go to our Republic campaign page, republic.co/levered. Thank you.
Oh, that's great. So we've got, you said that, where he is, Joshua was going to join you for, is Joshua?
Yeah, Josh is on here as well. You could probably unmute.
Yep, I'm here. It's a little
There
bit
we
dark, darker in here. Apparently I don't have enough light, but I am here.
Okay, we can see you hiding in the dark there. There we go. We got a couple questions up so far. One was, do the students take an initial evaluation test to determine their education level and what they need to work on?
Yeah, that's a great question, Nate. Levered is actually a competency-based program, which means that students have to show their mastery of the initial concepts before they can move on to the next level. So everyone actually starts in the same place, but then how quickly they move through the curriculum is dependent on how quickly they can show their proficiency. So that means in a week or so, you can see this range of students, kids who showed that they could do it and moved on to more challenging material. So it very quickly differentiates. But we don't actually do front-loaded assessments. In my experience, sometimes the kids who do well on a test actually benefit from digging into some of the more kind of conceptual foundational material. Just that's kind of the nature sometimes of those kids. They're good test takers, but then you ask them to do the visuals and visual models and things, and they may stumble a little bit. So it is competency-based and individually paced, but we don't focus too much on pre-tests.
Cool. So I had a question which you answered, but I'll ask you to elaborate a little bit. What is the biggest, and the reason I'm asking this question is I see businesses, a fair number of businesses that try to break into face it, school systems are bureaucratic systems and they're really rough to break into. So any insights you can provide, and especially what I asked was, what is the biggest barrier to adoption by the schools?
Our experience has been the hardest thing is to cut through the noise of the rest of the ed tech space and just get our foot in the door. When we get to the point where we're actually in a meeting and we get to do a demo of the product to either teachers, principals, administrators, our conversion rate at that point is 80-90% and up.
Wow.
So if they're looking, and everyone is looking, oftentimes what gums us up, aside from looking for a K-6 program, is timing. So if they just adopted a new curriculum, they've just spent $200,000 on professional development to try to get it in place, they need to wait 3 or 4 years before it falls flat, before they're looking for the next thing. But from our perspective, we could tell them, this other district adopted that 5 years ago, and now they're moving to a new thing. But everyone's kind of looking and looking. So I'd say those are the main. Joshua.
And when you go into the school system, what level do you enter at? Do you go in at the teacher level, the school level, the district level, state level?
Yeah, we're typically going in at the school or district level. And a lot of, we talked about sort of 80% of our growth being organic. So we also expanded into every district that we were in previously this year. So a reasonable strategy at a district level, even one like Mitch was talking about that may have other adoptions in place, is to say, we're really confident in our ability to move the needle. So we can say, put us in a couple of your schools, let us go head to head with what you've got, see if the teachers like it, the students like it, and see what the results are. And with that approach, like we said, every district that we've been in, we've grown. We've gotten more schools every year.
Yeah. And our impact makes us a bit of a unicorn. I mean, no one has the test data that we've got because it's such a comprehensive system and it works on so many different levels. Almost all of the other ed tech products are supplementals. they're designed to be layered on top of other forms of instruction. And so, these administrators are hired and fired based on test scores. So when we can say, if you bring us in, you can expect, 30, 40, 50% at least increase in your growth in the first year, it's a pretty easy conversation after that point.
Yeah, very cool. You guys are doing great work, and I just got the hook from my colleague here. So thank you very much. Really appreciate you updating. That crowdfunding campaign is open if people are interested in investing. I guess I shouldn't say too much along those lines. I'll break some SEC law, but rule. Check them out. What platform are you on?
On Republic, and the link's in the chat too.
Oh, excellent. Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Sorry, I don't know that. If you have a minute, I can show you a few things I can do. Do you want to hear more?
So you're going to have to educate Alexa here because she...
Sorry, I don't know that. If you have
Alexa,
a minute,
stop.
I can show you a few things I can do.
She's not listening.
Do you want to hear more?
Okay, next up is Tabitha Stroop of Terroir in a Jar, a very different business and a very creative business. I love what they do. Tabitha, tell us about Terroir in a Jar.
Thank you so much. As you heard, my name is Tabitha Stroop, and I'm the founder and chef of Terroir in a Jar. Terroir is a French agricultural term, and it simply means sense of place. And that is what we do. Slide 2, please. When most of us think of negative environmental impacts, we think of industrial pollution, not food. And in reality, food waste contributes to a significant 8% to all global emissions, and the US is third in overall food waste. 40% of all food in the United States goes wasted. Terroir in a Jar takes that opportunity and creates jars and bottles of possibilities. Our unique and creative co-packing service expands the products farms can offer to their customers, allowing them a year-round pantry to profit from. Third slide. We're a value-added co-packing service for farms. Our focus centers around reducing food waste, building profitability for ourselves and all of our farm accounts. We created unique-to-farm, shelf-stable products from jam to hot sauce and everything in between, and a 2-year shelf life. Next slide, please. Pie Ranch, for an example. An educational nonprofit farm account uses our services to create many value-added items sold at their busy farm stand on Highway 1 in Pescadero. Almost 8% of their gross sales come from products we produce. Next slide. To date, we have kept over 30,000+ pounds of viable food out of landfill. We just started March of 2019. Beyond the creation of our co-packed products, we also have farms that pick up the waste silage to feed animals or incorporate into permaculture farming systems. 100% of food coming through our kitchen is repurposed. Today, we have the ability to produce only 1,000 pounds of produce a week. This is all our space and COVID regulations will allow. In this case, a lot of financial meat is still left on the bone. With our custom menu to choose from, pick up and deliver service, because a farmer needs to stay on the farm. They lose money when they leave it, so we keep them there doing what they do best. We have speedy turnarounds, and our toolkit of aftercare services, our model ensures the farmer gets from seed to market efficiently and trouble-free. Next slide, please. The benefits are on both sides of the table. This is not just a business for us to gain revenue. It is also for the farms and the communities that we serve. With our unique take on the traditional co-pack model, we've injected terroir. With a small organic farm, there is so much to their sense of place compared to the mega agricultural complex, whose sole goal is output, no matter the consequence. We celebrate the farm the products hail from and make it the key player in the arrangement with ourselves and the farmer. Our triple bottom line model focuses on the earth, equity, and end use. take the main ingredients from said farm, create unique to the farm shelf-stable products. We sell back to the farm at a distribution wholesale, thus in turn allowing the farms up to 2 years to sell these products at a full 100% markup. That's a 50% profit margin. This is literally unheard of in the co-packing arena. We use traditional distribution wholesale model to ensure the markup is a number the market will bear and creates the highest revenue for ourselves, the farmer, and the community. It is a win-win-win. Our risk is low, success is a guarantee. Even with COVID and the raging fires, we have been able to keep the doors open due to our COG model. We are able to remove 6 financial burdens from the bottom line of our co-pack cost of goods. Let's dive into that. We don't have to pay for a label. We have no broker or distribution fees or internal marketing dollars to be spent. And the main ingredient is provided by our farm account and no repackaging or inventory. Without these financial variables, our profitability is not only higher, but more secure, while still giving the farm a number they can thrive on. Next slide, please. As the founder of Terroir in a Jar, I have over 30 years of culinary experience. I'm a 1996 Cordon Bleu graduate with a focus in food science. I have been a restaurant pastry chef, caterer, and educator in several Bay Area colleges. I'm also a level 1 SOM with an emphasis, it's been a long day, on terroir. I founded the nationally distributed Friend in Cheese's Jam Company in 2011 and in Terroir in a Jar in 2019. I am building a retail distribution partnership with Terroir in a Jar with the New Leaf and New Seasons chains, giving our farms another financial outlet to sell their products. The Pajaro Valley is not only a region I work in, but I live there as well. Farmlands surround my home and my dollars stay local to help ensure the strength of our agricultural future. This isn't just a business venture, it is my life. I have the other understanding of the preserve industry to be successful. All the years building Friend in Cheeses was my training for Terroir in a Jar. Next slide, please. Our farm accounts have all been obtained by community word of mouth and existing relationships from purchasing in my years as a chef, caterer, and jam girl, and utilization of social media. Almost a perfect marketing model with no dollars spent. Since March of 19, we have secured over 25 reoccurring farm partners throughout Santa Cruz, San Mateo, and San Benito counties. Next slide, please. Building relationships through food brings our attention to Mother Earth. She's dying by our greedy hands. If we don't have more programs like Terroir in a Jar, the lack of action will surely do away with the earth we once knew. Next slide, please. Today, join us in the journey to food waste redemption and help us expand and create the infrastructure to enable us together to create not only an exception, but a rule in all agricultural regions to not only save food from waste, but expand the rainbow of offerings unique to each region. We have the proof of concept and the farms in queue. I thank you for your precious time and consideration. I can only hope at the very least I have opened your eyes to a new creative solution that benefits not only the business, but the community as a whole. Join me. I promise the journey will be worth it. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Tabitha. Very cool. You can breathe now.
That was really good.
Come on, you guys. You got to have some questions.
So I have a question about scaling.
Sure.
What struck me on this, how far can this business scale and what's the model for scaling it?
Well, here we go. My mind says licensing deals with other agricultural communities, building this model, which we're still in that process, and being able to monetize it in virtually any other growing region in our country. So we are basically the home base for what our future can hold with a licensing type situation. And so pretty much the sky's the limit. If there is a need or if there is food not getting to a human being, should be in that community. And that's that.
Cool. All right. So a licensing or franchise type system.
Yeah,
Cool.
exactly.
Makes sense. Yep.
Yeah. And I mean, what a better region for me to create the first project is in one of the richest growing regions in the country.
Absolutely.
It's really exciting. Yeah.
Cool.
Come on.
Any other questions? So if people want to find out more about you, where do they go?
They go to terroirinajar.com, and Terroir in a Jar is our Instagram page. We keep it very simple, very linear, and you'll see we are not backed by a marketing company that does not bring the true story. I bring the reality of food companies to the forefront. I think people need to understand that we're not in this for the huge bucks, but the passion. And it shows through with our social media and how I conduct myself as the moderator of such. People need to see the good days, the bad days, the crazy days, and feel like they're part of their food. Because we've been so removed by, big box shopping and not understanding our seasons. And yes, that is that.
Very cool. Thank you very much, Tabitha. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. And whom do we have next? Sibley Simon, who we recognize by the hat, and New Way Homes.
Great. Thanks very much. As it says, New Way Homes is a 501c3 nonprofit that's inciting and bringing about much more affordable and below market rate housing in our region, as well as in Alameda County. Go ahead to the next slide. So I really want to say up front, a lot of the huge fights, debates, from folks who genuinely want to help our housing crisis about what should be done, often come down to conflating or differently prioritizing the fact we have three major parts to our housing crisis. One that's most extreme in California compared to anyone else in the country, just huge shortage of total housing. We just don't have enough. But at the same time, everywhere in the United States, there are people who can't afford any of the safe, non-crowded, housing that's available. So that's a safety net problem and social services problem. And then incredible history that we have of disastrous, tragic racial discrimination on housing that really can be tracked to most of the racial wealth gap that we have in the United States. So those are all three extremely important, and it's important when we're talking about housing to recognize that complexity and what we're trying to accomplish and try to, solve one without making the other worse, et cetera. Next slide. So, and just a little more, since this one's more California unique, although all those equally important here, it's just really important to understand that we're over 2 million units of housing short compared to the rest of the United States per capita outside of California. So it's no surprise that when we have an auction for our available housing, that it's extremely expensive here. And the other really important point is to realize even with all the headlines about housing, the action of the legislature, some degree of additional money in recent years put into affordable housing, it's getting worse every year. We're still simply not building enough to keep up with the increase in demand. So the gap is increasing every year. Next slide. So really then, again, a lot of great regulatory work has been being done in the last 5 years. I'm sure you know about a lot of it. More is going to happen. And that has been absolutely necessary for turning around our housing affordability situation in California. But it's not sufficient. And as I got into this, because I've been helping a lot with homelessness in Santa Cruz County and implementing best practices that elsewhere in the country were eliminating veteran and chronic homelessness, but not here, really saw the differences to the housing market. And to solve that, we need a new model for development. So we have market rate development. It's about 80,000 units a year in California. And its current way it works it could scale to some extent, but not nearly to fill the gap. Because it's high return, high risk investment underpins it. And just the way it's built out, it reaches the top of the market, serves the top of the market, not even middle class housing. Secondly, affordable housing is amazing and great, publicly funded affordable housing. We should do more of it. But we're not going to come up with $1 trillion in California that it would take to fill our housing gap with publicly funded housing. So there has to be something else in addition to those models, which could grow somewhat. We need something else. So I've set about creating a new model for housing development that we not only want to grow what we're doing, but inspire other people to do versions of this or copy what we're doing, which is really a lower risk, lower return model. And then using all the tools that get unlocked by trying to maximize affordability and having a different model for funding the housing. Next slide. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but there are all kinds of tools for making housing more affordable, even when you're privately financing it and need to get a return for investors. The most important thing is at the bottom that we raise money through impact investment. So all the funding coming into our housing is at a capped or fixed return. So we know what return we're going to get for investors, and then we make all kinds of other decisions and trade-offs during a project to maximize affordability. And we're able to do all kinds of things that the other models don't work for to create new mixed income and all affordable housing. Next slide. So in another element I just want to highlight, we have found some ways to specifically work on racial equity in housing, which includes there's quite a few Black churches we're working with in Alameda County and expanding to surrounding areas where we can build assets in those communities to reduce displacement specifically. So it's turned out our model fits really well there for institutions that wanted to help build housing and didn't have a way to do it. And so our very first project that's under construction is with this church that's been shown here, is nearing completion. Next slide. And you can't really read that text, but the idea is that we have all kinds of different housing models to increase affordability. The biggest category in that pie chart is permanent supportive housing for folks coming out of long-term homelessness. So paired with supportive services, we're doing a whole bunch of that here in Santa Cruz to help with homelessness. The very smallest category is market rate housing. It's only 5% of our pie chart. And we got everything in between. Income restricted, very low and low income housing, moderate income housing, co-living. So each bedroom can be at affordable rates, even though it's not restricted by income, all kinds of different ways we get every project to be as affordable as possible. And I'll just highlight real quick, that was just in the upper right-hand corner there, is just an artist rendering. It's not the actual design, but it represents our first project in Monterey County, which is in Salinas and East Salinas, bringing about the East Aliso Vibrancy Plan that the community's really worked on for several years. So that's going to be an 84 unit project that we're really excited about in Salinas. Next slide. So we've raised a bunch of capital for the work. The New Way Homes Fund in the upper left is the key part that we're doing a crowdfunding raise for right now as well. And that's the seed funding for projects. It really gets them through what's seen as the riskier stage. But with new laws in California, the way we're doing it, including some affordable housing, it's way less risky than it was even just a few years ago. So that's the seed funding that gets projects through to a planning approval, which makes it way easier to fund from there and raise these other sources of funding to leverage them. And so our first two projects are already 100% funded, and we're well on our way with our next couple projects getting funded as well. Next slide.
1 minute.
Okay, great, perfect. Just some of the institutions that have funded us in the region, from Dignity Health to some different foundations, that's been really exciting to pull and become a core focus to us, bring sources of funding that have not been funding housing and have not been funding affordable housing to this work. So we're not competing. We don't compete for public dollars. So we're generally not getting any public funds. We don't want to take that away from other great nonprofit housing developers. And generally then we're finding sources that haven't invested in housing before. Next slide. Just some of our leadership team here. We got great experience on our board, and a couple of us leading New Way Homes. And we also bring a team of folks that can do functions from architecture and design to permitting to general contracting, so that we can really lower the cost of all those functions. Next slide. And lastly, raising funding on WeFunder. There in the URLs in the lower right. Love people to check it out. There's a video there about what we're doing, and you can learn a ton more. And so we're raising the next chunk of capital we need to bring our next over 300 units through to approval. I'll stop there.
Cool. Thank you very much. So, anybody have any questions they want to ask?
Somebody asked a question about transitional housing. You know, there is more work on transitional housing happening, but the reality is for folks who've been long-term homeless, it's turned out that the way more effective programs are, well, twofold. One is prevention. So an ounce of prevention, you know, goes a lot further. So there are more funding going into preventing homelessness these days. And then, but then on the other end, with it's permanent supportive housing. And it just is, you know, you want to get folks into any kind of shelter you can. That's always better than nothing. But the reality is for folks who've been long-term homeless, the best solution is permanent housing with services. And so the federal funding has reflected this, has gone away from transitional housing and to both prevention and permanent supportive housing. There should be more of everything. And there's even some privately funded transitional housing that might come online that I was talking, you know, to folks about yesterday. But that's where the directions have gone on that. Any other questions?
Cool. Any words of wisdom about the crowdfunding?
You know, it takes a lot of work. And so, you know, you have to put in, you know, a ton of work, getting it set up, getting all the materials, you know, thinking through the plan. It's all about the marketing plan then and who you know. And we find, you know, when I put more effort into outreaching to people I know, we get more money coming in. And when I get buried in working another housing work, you know, we don't. So it takes a lot of time. That said, I mean, the great thing, you know, we're maybe past the very seed stage. But for us, you know, it's getting a lot more fans in our community, which is great. In addition to the dollars, it's getting more supporters, and it's opening doors, you know, from more larger investors or larger institutions that just see it as a way of like, oh, you got all these people invested. That's amazing. And you're raising money and you can see all the materials we had to prepare for this. So it's opening more larger doors as well. So it's really worth it when you have, you know, the right situation and the right resources to pursue it, I think.
Cool. Well, best of luck to you. It's a great business, and you're making a great contribution. Thank you very much, Sibley.
Thank you.
And our final presenters, 17 Mile Drive Entertainment by the founders, Cecily Gambrell. Cecily, tell us about 17 Mile Drive Entertainment.
Hello, thank you for having me / us. My business partner Tracy is in Maui. He's the film commissioner there, so I'll just get that out of the way. I wish she could be with me. 17 Mile Drive Entertainment is something that I phrase LA by the Bay. The concept kind of came to me a couple of years ago, seeing as there's so many productions that come through here. Next slide, please. CNN said about Big Little Lies that the town is the real star of the show. And as you can see, there are several productions that come through here, and they do leave our community some dollars. But if we had the infrastructure and an actual studio facility here, we could keep a lot more money in our community and create a lot of jobs, especially for the students at CSU MB. Next slide, please. So by creating a full service studio in this area, we can not only serve the pass-through productions, as I like to call them, we'd start to create our own productions, and through a potential alliance with CSUMB, start creating jobs for these students that are honing their skills in the artistic crafts instead of shipping them off to LA. Next slide, please. These are some of the examples of other filmmakers that have done the same thing in different areas. Tyler Perry, for example, created Tyler Perry Studios in Atlanta. Troublemaker Studios is Robert Rodriguez's place in Austin. And of course, we all know Skywalker Sound and George Lucas. Next slide, please. So this place, I grew up here. I grew up in Pacific Grove and Pebble Beach area. My grandmother, Marcia Hovick, ran the Forest Theater for 40 plus years. And this place has always been in demand as a location for artistic ventures of all manner. Next slide, please. So we want to bring our experience in the entertainment industry here to create an infrastructure and a place where we can actually grow, you know, a satellite type of Hollywood situation. Tracy, my business partner, and I met on Armageddon some time back. We've been partners ever since. He is now the film commissioner in Maui and has grown the industry there times 10 in 5 years. And he's gotten 2 productions in this COVID era in active production in Maui, which is a huge accomplishment. I myself am a producer, I do distribution, and I have a large intellectual property catalog that would bring a great asset to this venture. Next slide, please. So our products and services initially come as your general content, your traditional content. We're running out of content because of COVID has shut down our industry, but our model incorporates that aspect into its beginning stages. So we're not kind of reinventing the wheel, which is what's occurring in the entertainment industry right now. So that gives us an advantage to create general traditional content like you watch now, and then also content based on the area. For example, think of like home and living shows. We can do stuff with agriculture here. We can do stuff with the golf industry or wine, hospitality industry. There are several offshoot options that can take place and create jobs and create content that is valid and valuable. Next slide, please. It's kind of a staged ask. Initially, we would like to start out with a couple of productions to get, you know, the concept on the map. And then what we will do is build the infrastructure in a very sustainable and non-intrusive way in the sense of brick and mortar and building. We would establish the internal and external operating procedures. Tracy and I both know how the studio industry works, so we have a bit of an advantage there. Next slide, please. So this, the first stage would be the startup of the company itself. So you'd initiate the company and processes and whatnot. We would develop these 2 projects using CSU MB talent and the area and create content that kind of expands the concept of what people think of this area, not just a pass-through production place, but a place to come and make and create. Next slide, please. This would be the second stage, which would be the larger portion. That would be the creation of the infrastructure. So we are 1 degree of separation. My business partner, Tracy, has a business partner friend who builds sustainable sound stages out of containers. Next slide, please. He has developed this model where he takes shipping containers and can build customizable sound stages and production facilities according to specs that the producer or whomever might desire, whatever we might desire it to look like and feel like and be like. It's sustainable, it's non-intrusive, you don't have to break ground, and it can be, again, customizable, very environmentally friendly, and it can be placed in the most advantageous places for transportation and back and forth. Next slide, please. Again, to note on the COVID aspect, we have the luxury at this point of creating around COVID. So it allows us to be functional versus reinventing the wheel, like I was mentioning before. We don't have to recreate everything. We get to create in a way that allows us to kind of get ahead of the curve in regards to COVID. Next slide, please. That's the end of my slides. Okay. Well, like I said, this place is beautiful. I grew up here and I see no reason why there can't be a production facility here. This has been an arts and culture hub since its beginning. I've seen so many productions come through here and I've seen so much money kind of roll in and roll out. And with what's happening at CSU MB, there's no reason why there can't be a symbiotic relationship between the two to keep talent at home and to create things at home versus going to LA. This can be the new LA, the LA by the Bay.
Instead of us going to LA, we'll bring LA here. I got it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So there's a question in chat. Nate's asking, are you accepting screenplays or pilot scripts at this point?
Absolutely. Why not? That's the whole purpose, it's moving those creative wheels in the community and keeping the creativity here. There's no reason it can't happen.
So this is really combining Northern and Southern California. Sometimes when I think about the difference between Northern and Southern, I think of that if you live in the LA area, you have to have a script in your back pocket. And if you live in the San Francisco Bay Area, you've got to have a business plan in your back pocket. And it's kind of similar, actually, in many ways. And you combine the two?
Yeah, and I've got both. So, yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about the support for CSUMB. The film program there has been very, very successful.
That's what I understand. Yeah. And there's, like I said, you know, I grew up here and I couldn't get out of here fast enough to go to LA. And that's what I did. And I worked in the industry for 25 years, that there's no reason talent needs to leave home. There is so much talent on the peninsula. And the LA market has become so saturated at this juncture, given digital media and the ability for people to create content. So it's like why, if I could, this is going to be a really materialistic comparison, but it's like Monterey Peninsula is like a Bentley to me. And LA is kind of like a Honda right now. It's so saturated. And it's just so dime a dozen. And I'm not like putting down anybody's, you know, creative contribution. I wouldn't do that. But it's like when you're in a market where you can stand out right out of the gate, why not stay in that market?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for doing that. I'm excited. Thank you very much for doing the presentation, Cecily.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So I think that, did we get everybody? I think we got everybody. Let's come back to my slides to make sure. There we go. Yep. So if any of others of you are interested in presenting, that was 4 great presenters, 4 really, really, really different businesses. I don't think they could be any more different. But each of them making a huge contribution to our community and to society, which is really great. That's what we do this for, eh? So any of you who are interested in presenting, we'd love to have you present at the Monterey Tech Meetup. Reach out to us at info@startupmontereybay.com. And what else do we have here to finish out? Special thanks to our sponsors, of course, IP Society and Angel to Exit, Blue Tech Valley, Startup Monterey Bay, and Cal State University Monterey Bay. And we'll see you in November. We do this the second Tuesday of every month. We're going to have, I think if we roll over, I think the next one says something about the theme. Oh, and Startup Weekend will be coming up in early February. Stay tuned for updates. We don't have exact dates yet. We're still figuring out how exactly we're going to run it in COVID, but it will be coming up as it does every year. And stay updated, sign up for our newsletter, and that is in chat. See you next time, Tuesday, the 10th, second Tuesday in November, where we'll all be celebrating, I hope. And the theme will be Ag Tech for that one. Thank you all very much for coming. It's been fun. Thank you to our fabulous presenters. Really, I'm excited about all 4 businesses. They are so cool. And we'll see you all next time. Have a great night.